Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Insider, brought to you, just for a change, by Vanishing Inc. My guest today fooled Penn and Teller. He's won the Magic Circle's Close-Up Magician of the Year competition not once, not twice, but thrice. He's also a FISM Micro Magic winner and he's a proper worker. On top of all that, he manages to release some incredibly popular real-world tricks, like his much-loved Nest of Wallets, the Build-to-Marker, and he's also written many, many best-selling books. You've probably guessed. It's Nick Einhorn. Nick, how are you this morning?
I'm great, thank you very much. I'm really curious. Your voice just changed in the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, I do this thing where I put on my podcast voice.
I love it. It's really good. It suits you very much.
No, you've ruined the illusion for everybody. It's a 30-minute show. We're going to crack on. What's your origin story? You've got 24 seconds.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I had a magician at my 4th birthday. My dad then bought a magic trick for me. I believe it was the thumb tip silk vanish from Hamleys. I don't think he intended to tell me how it was done, but I just whined until he told me. Then my parents found a magician locally that would teach me how to do magic when I was really getting into it, and I got a magic set. And then I joined, I think then I started doing magic for Marvin's Magic, and then I joined the Ilford Magic Society, the Magic Circle, was a part-time pro and then became a full-time pro.
That's good. You got it on time as well. I heard a funny story, you got your thumb tip at Christmas, but I heard another funny story about Christmas and Davenport's Rainbow Cascade. Can you share that with the listeners, please?
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know anyone knew about that. So this is funny. My parents, so it was coming up to Christmas, and I guess it must have been mid-December, and I went for a little hunt around my parents' bedroom just for my Christmas presents to try and find out what they were going to be before the 25th. I'm assuming I wasn't the only 10-year-old that did that. And then I found in my dad's cupboard Rainbow Cascade, and I assumed it wasn't for him. And I secretly kind of used to pull it out, practice it, and then put it back. And then I'd do that multiple times. And then on Christmas Day, I unwrapped the present and then feigned surprise. Oh my God, brilliant, magic trick. And then within 10 minutes, I was performing this trick. I'd learnt the Elmsley count just from the instructions, and I'd been working really hard on it for the last 2 weeks. And my dad looked at my mum and went, "It's a genius. It's amazing." And to this day, he doesn't know that I'd done that.
Well, let's hope he doesn't listen to the show.
I know.
You worked for Marvin's in that golden era with Buckler and Andy Neumann and Mark Paul and the late Anthony Owen. Can you paint a picture of what that world looked like? What was an average day for you?
Yeah, it was amazing. And I have to tell you, this is a funny thing. I started working for Marvin's Magic before I was even paid to do so. I think I was probably about 14 years old and used to take myself up to London and watch Bruce Smith performing behind the counter. And when he used to go for his lunch break, I used to jump in behind the big top hat and I used to demonstrate the Marvin's Magic and sell it to these people. And I wasn't being paid to do it. I wasn't in a Hamleys t-shirt. I was just standing there having a great time. Yeah. And then I think Bruce would come back and I'd kind of jump out again. And a few months later or a year later, I actually applied to do my work experience with Marvin's Magic. And Mark Paul gave me my first ever interview for a job. First time I'd met him. And I then went to work for Marvin's Magic for my work experience, which then led on to me working with all of these great people. And someone that's not on that list who I met on my work experience week was a guy called Paul Andrews. At the time went under the name of Paul Foster, and he taught me a great deal, and I know he does a lot of TV stuff, very creative guy now, but I have a lot to thank him for, and I've never forgotten that. And all of these people, I mean, I spent so much time with Andy and with Anthony Owen, and my God, do I miss Anthony Owen. And all of these great people, John Allen, Danny Buckler was there for a while I was there. We used to meet every single day. We used to chat before we started work. Lunchtimes were great. We used to natter for an hour about all things magic. And we were all living, eating and breathing magic. None of us were married at that point. Mm-hmm. None of us had kids. And it's all we ever did was just talk about magic. And it was fantastic.
Do you think working for commission, do you think that changed your work ethic?
I loved it. My dad was an insurance salesman, and so would essentially be working in the same kind of way, selling insurance, life assurance, and all of that kind of stuff. And I used a lot of the things that he taught me in terms of motivation and trying to close the sale and all of that. I loved the whole psychology behind trying to make someone buy something they had no intention of buying when they walked into the store.
Sure.
And then getting a reward for that, which was the commission. And yes, come Christmas as well, when the place was absolutely flooded with people, I used to knock myself out selling stuff all day long. I mean, really work hard. There were a few of us that just went over and above, and we used to smash, at the time, all known records and in those days, earn really good money from doing it.
And do you think that kind of cold calling visitors to Hamleys helped you when it came to getting corporate clients and getting work for your magic shows?
I don't know if it helped me get the shows, but what it did is it gave me the stamina that I needed when I was working, because I was used to being on my feet for 6 hours a day.
Sure.
And engaging with people. And one of the big things that I learned there is that every single time I perform, it's got to be like it's the first time I've done that performance.
Okay.
We all know, we do tricks. We've done the ambitious card 10,000 times, and that's a conservative estimate. But if the audience suspects that we've done it 10,000 times, we're not doing our job right. So we have to make it look like it's the very first time we've performed it. It's fresh, it's engaging, and all of those little moments, those connections with the audience through the performance have to seem real and very genuine as well.
Okay, so for younger listeners to the show, how do you do that? How do you make it feel fresh?
I think we have to remember that when we're performing magic, every time we perform is a brand new experience. We're not just doing magic for ourselves, we're doing it for them, and that moment is one-off, it's original, and anything can happen. So my friend John Allen says spectators don't exist. He wrote a book on it, and it's really true. They're not spectators, they're participants. And so when we engage with people, whether it's virtually nowadays or actually in person, we've got a great opportunity to actually connect with them in a way that we've not connected with anyone else, or make it seem that way at least, so we can have some fun. And if they interject with a comment, don't just ignore it and plow on because it's not in your script. Acknowledge what they said, and maybe it will take you into a little side direction, and then you come back on track, and then you finish your routine. But that's what makes it unique and personal to them. Sometimes you see someone do something, you get the impression that it would be exactly the same performance if there was no one in front of them.
Yeah, fair. Clarity of effect is something that I feel that's important to you. Can you tell me what that means and how you work towards achieving it?
Yes, I think that there's a lot of times when I watch magic where it's convoluted, it's confusing, the method might be great, and maybe that's what drives the magician to do it the way that they do it, but it's not about the method, it's about the impact on the audience and the effect ultimately. So if you finish this blockbuster 10-minute routine, but it's really convoluted and really confusing to follow and no one's quite sure what's meant to have happened, there's no clarity of effect. And there's a reason why some of the best, most classic of magic tricks, such as the cups and balls, the card on ceiling, bottle through table, coins across, they can all be explained in just a few words.
Right. Fair enough.
So that's the importance of the clarity of effect. I think if people can tell the story afterwards and explain to their friends what happened, then there's a clarity of effect.
Yeah, absolutely. To follow on from that, your work almost always has a very clear sort of moment of astonishment. Why do you think that's important?
I like to try and give it that, and it's perhaps that's easier when you're doing a magic trick rather than doing mentalism, because with mentalism things kind of unfold and they can take a bit more time. I mean, you've got the impact of getting it right,
sure,
but the process is a bit of a slow burn. I really like, and I don't think there's enough of visual magic. I mean, there's this great everyone at the moment is into mentalism, and obviously what Darren's done over the last 20 years has massively influenced the way that people engage with psychological illusions. Sure. But I don't think that there's that many people out there that are doing the really visual stuff. And I really enjoy watching that myself. And it's moments like that I like to try and give my audience. Probably not enough, if the truth be told.
Right.
But I think that moment of astonishment is really powerful. You can't overuse it. You have to mix that with other stuff as well. But I think there's nothing better than looking at something and going, what just happened there? That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Now, Piff came on the show a while ago and said in the interview several times that you're one of the nicest people in the entire world.
Oh, bless him.
Your performing persona is certainly that of a charming gentleman. Do you think this attitude or this persona is something that's helped your success as a performer and creator?
Wow, that's lovely to know. I always admire people like Alan Shaxson, who was a real gentleman. He became a very good friend before he passed away. I spent a lot of time with him growing up, actually, because I worked near him and spent a lot of time. And I really used him as a role model for how I wanted to be perceived by my audiences.
Right.
I think it's nice to be nice. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that. I always go by the rule that blowing out somebody else's flame won't make your flame grow any brighter.
Yeah.
And I really feel passionate about that. I don't think it's helped me from a creative point of view particularly. But people like to deal with people they like. So if you've got a nice persona and people think you're a decent fella, then they'll want to book you, they'll want to work with you, and perhaps co-collaborate, and then maybe it does help from a creative point of view when you do that.
Yeah. Before you took up magic, you worked in advertising, I understand. Do you think that helped your magic in any way, or influenced it?
I was very frustrated. I worked in advertising, but I wasn't on the creative side because I'd come in through the back door. I wasn't really. I didn't study for advertising. I ended up there in a weird set of circumstances, and I was actually in an area called traffic and control, which sounds like a drugs operation. But
well, it was advertising.
Yeah. And really what it meant is you had to kind of keep track of the timings and make sure that people were coming up. You passed the concepts onto the creatives and then made sure that it actually was delivered on time by everyone. And I was an 18-year-old that was well out of my depth with that. But I used to see the concepts come in, and then I used to give them to the creatives. And what I used to do is photocopy them and work on them myself and try and come up with ideas. And so that, from a creative point of view, nothing magical at all. But I was always thinking, how can I come up with the answer to the question that was being asked? And then one day I actually came up with an idea that I shared with the creative guys.
Oh.
And it was for Virgin Atlantic, and that was one of our clients at the time, and they actually put that in the mix with all of their ideas and presented it to Richard Branson at the time.
Blimey.
And out of all of them, he chose my one to go with. And so my ad ran on the front page of the Sunday Times for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
And it was amazing. And I literally have the thing laminated in my loft. I haven't seen it for years, but it's up there. And I remember being so proud that I came up with something that eventually made it, into the Sunday Times and was chosen to this, that, and the other. But I did not get one single bit of recognition from the company. Not a pat on the back, not a thank you, not an acknowledgement that I had a good idea. And that was the moment where I thought, well, if I'm creative enough to do something that's recognised like that, I can probably do it for myself, and I'm not being valued here, so I'm just going to walk. Right. And that's what I did.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah.
What a loss for them. But
well, I don't know about that, but I just felt like I had so much more to give, and I wasn't being given the opportunity to do it.
Sure. But so advertising finished, and now you're being flown round the world to do gigs for the world to do. But what advice would you give for somebody trying to get started? And let's just, for the sake of the conversation, pretend we're not in the middle of a global pandemic. Yeah,
that's nice. I try and pretend that every day. I think it's really important to get out there and actually work and not be afraid of hard work. So I found when I was 18, 19, I found a couple of places where I got myself a residency. And when I say a few places, I mean, at one time I had 4 or 5 places every single week. I used to do
residency. And what are we talking? Bars, pubs, restaurants?
So I had a football club.
Right.
In fact, I'm still involved very much with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. For 25 years, I've performed for them, and now have a company that provides all of the entertainment and a lot of the hosts and hostesses. We have nearly 100 people on a match day in normal times in the new £1 billion stadium, and so I'm very much involved with a couple of my colleagues. One who's a magician, Craig Squires, who also owns an event company, and then another girl who's one of the co-directors outside of Magic. And we have a fantastic time doing that. So that was something that started back then. I also at that time did West Ham United Football Club and was involved with them. I had a couple of restaurants, one in the city, which was a Spanish tapas bar, which I loved doing. Ended up doing twice a week at one point. When I finished doing that, Jamie Raven used to work with the owner's sister in an accounting company. I think it was in account somewhere, and said, "Oh, I really love magic and I really want to do something." She said, "Oh, the magician's just left our restaurant. Why don't you go and speak to my brother?" and he took over my residency. Yeah. So that was a restaurant. I did another restaurant in Berkhamsted for a while, which went bust and ended up owing me money.
Oh dear.
Another story. So I had loads going on, and so I was meeting people all the time, and even some of my clients today go back that far, and they're still using me even today, 20 years later.
Fair enough. Good answer. What's one thing that you would have done differently throughout your career?
Oh, that's a very good question. By and large, I feel like I've done everything that I wanted to do, and I've really enjoyed doing. I think from a non-magic point of view, I used to love technical drawing. I used to love, I think I would have enjoyed going into architecture or something like that and studying that side of things and doing all of the technical drawing and stuff. I never followed that. I would love to have known where I would have ended up if I'd have done that. But having said that, I'm very happy with what I've done. I suppose the only thing I would have changed is about 3 or 4 years ago, I'd have started working on a virtual show in case I ever needed one.
At Vanishing Inc., as you're probably aware, we all really, really love magic books. What are some magic books that you think every magician should read?
Yeah, first of all, I prefer books over DVDs any day of the week. Because I can dip into them, I can just pull a book off the bookshelf, and I don't have a huge library. I've probably got about 200 books. I know that's big for some. I know that for others that is a tiny, tiny collection. But I love nothing more than pulling a book off the bookshelf, opening it up, and just being inspired by what I read. Can't do that so easily with a DVD. I don't want to be watching the screen all the time, and when you fast forward stuff, you might miss something. But if you flick through the pages and you're just looking, you generally find something of interest. Some of the books that I love are probably things I was connected to when I was younger. So The Magic of Michael Ammar I mentioned before is a book that I bought when I was probably about 17 or 18. And I was heavily influenced by his magic. I still to this day think he's a phenomenal performer. There's something about him that is just amazing and engaging. The book is full of stuff. I don't do all the stuff in there, but I love reading it, and I can dip in and out of that all the time. I'm a great fan of Chris Kenner's Totally Out of Control. There's a book that maybe not enough people know about. And again, it's not something that I do a few routines from there, and I have done other routines in the past, but that is a book that I don't know what it is about it, but I can just look at it over and over again and never get bored of it. There are some books you kind of look at once and you think, I don't have to look at that again. But other ones, fascinating. Drawing Room Deceptions by Guy Hollingworth is another book that every time I open it, I find something else in there that's just fascinating. The Books of Wonder.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you go wrong with those? They are phenomenal.
That's a good list.
Absolutely brilliant. And then there's the Magic of... I've got them here, actually. Look at that. These are 2 books. The Mental Magic of Basil Horowitz.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all like stuff with billets and envelopes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have the Horowitz Add a Number pad, which is fantastic.
Yeah, great stuff in there. Love them.
I'm interested in your creative process when it comes to releasing tricks. Your Nest of Wallets is universally recognised as the best version available. Tell me about that release and the process. Where did you start? What was the journey? And how did you end up where you ended up?
Okay, so the journey with that one, I purchased the Nest of Wallets because it's not original to me. It's been around for many, many years.
Yeah.
And I purchased it at a convention. And I remember the day I bought it was the first day I performed it. It was that good. and I literally took it in the afternoon, and then I was working in the evening, and I threw it into my close-up set, and it was like, wow, this is something really special. Eventually, I'd used them so much they'd worn out, and when I went to buy them again from the people that were selling them, they didn't sell them anymore. And I contacted them and said, you're going to restock them? And they said no. And then it wasn't their product. It belonged to a guy called Jean-Paul Merton. That was the guy whose name was on the packaging, and it turned out to be a guy from Belgium. And I contacted him to ask him about where this idea came from. And I think it goes back even further than him, although he didn't have a source for it.
Right.
But he had created these wallets, and he'd put them together, and he'd sold them to this magic company that I had bought them from. Anyway, he invited me to Belgium, which was very lovely of him. And so I went over to Belgium, spent a couple of days with him, and he showed me everything. And he was very happy for me to go and reproduce them, basically, and have a set made. And what I wanted to do is make sure that the set I had was like really great quality. And so I had them made with Alan Wong, who looked after the production for me. And the quality of the wallets was beautiful. And we've now sold, I think, 10,000 units across the world, which is amazing. And what I did with it, though, is I put together routines that were for the real-world worker. Because a lot of the time, and this happens with a couple of things that I've got, and I bought the rights to the Build to Marker as well from Antonio Romero, which is a phenomenal trick. And actually, Vanishing Ink originally put that out there with me. I worked with them on that to get it out there, to release it. And the thing about both of those things, they were tricks that already existed, but the instructions weren't very clear in terms of how to use it.
Okay.
So as a working magician who had literally gone out and used it hundreds and hundreds of times, if not thousands, I'd worked out little nuances and little routines and ways to get into and out of the trick that made it totally practical from every point of view. And so what I did is I kind of incorporated that in the package. It wasn't just the materials you were buying, it was actually the thought and the construction of the routine that meant that people could pick it up and they could literally drop it into their performance. And that's what thousands of magicians have done, and thankfully, and I have so many, nice comments and some great feedback about the fact that it's stuff they really, really use.
Fantastic. Let's talk about competitions. You won the Circle's Close-Up Magician of the Year 3 times and placed at the FISM Micromagic. What is it that attracted you to entering these competitions? Was it for recognition, the process of doing a competition? Why did you do it?
I think for both of those reasons as well. When you're growing up as a magician and there's so many magicians around, it's nice to try and get a little bit of recognition in the industry. And one of the ways you can do that is by winning awards and being recognised. I had entered the close-up competition probably more as a challenge to myself.
Right.
Very often, certainly in the more recent times, you watch these competitions and it's very easy to sit there and say to yourself, well, I could do better than that. Sometimes you say it to your mates. You go, oh my God, that was appalling. I mean, God, I could do better than that.
It's said quite often in the club room after the competitions.
Yeah. But there's a great deal of difference between saying, I could do better than that, and actually bothering to try and do better than that.
Right.
And then when you start to try and do better than that, you realise why it's not as easy as it looks. The first time I did a performance at FISM was in it was in Germany, actually, in Dresden. And James Friedman and a guy called John Wolvett, who owned a company called Magic Management, they had taken me under their wing when I was 18 years old, maybe. And they said to me they wanted to invest in me, and I said, "What do you mean?" And they went, "We think you're going to do really well. We would like to pay for you to go out to Germany. We want to sponsor you to take part in FISM." And out of the goodness of their hearts, and honestly, it blew me away at the time. Yeah, I was thinking to myself, well, this kind of stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah.
They just said, we really like you, we really like what you do, we think you do really well, we're going to help you if you need any help, and we'll pay for you to go out there and do it. So that was a big moment for me. And also I felt like I had to do well because I was representing them, essentially. And I didn't come anywhere, I wasn't placed, but I came up with some really nice ideas. When I think back about that act, There's some moments in that act I really, really enjoyed. And then I went back to the Hague in the Netherlands to do that FISM, and I came second, and that was amazing. I mean, that was really staggering. But yes, I did the Magic Circle close-up competitions. I did quite well in them. One of them was an all-winners competition for the centenary close-up magician, something like that. And I love the creative process. I love trying to come up with something that's very succinct, that you try and... That is something you do script really tightly, because you've only got, let's say, 6 to 8 minutes. Yeah. And it's only when you start scripting things you realise all of the nonsense that you're actually saying doesn't really need to be said. All of the ums and the ahs and the what we're going to do, and we're going to try something. And
that's perfect.
I'm going to shuffle the cards. Well, I know you're going to shuffle it because you are shuffling. Why are you telling me you're shuffling the cards? You're shuffling them. You know, we all do this all day long, and these are the little bits that once you start cutting away all of that rubbish, you suddenly get to a point where you're really polishing a diamond. You know, you can get it to the point where it's a thing of beauty.
I think competition acts are quite different from what you'd be doing at the football clubs or the restaurants or the corporate gigs. Do you think the competition stuff helped shape that, or is it just two different worlds? That's the competition stuff, that's the real world stuff.
I'll tell you what did help shape it. Close-up competitions, in my opinion, have very little to do with close-up magic.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're performing to a group of people who are not really on top of you like a close-up situation. They're an audience in front of you, like a parlour act. Yeah, or a stage act. Now, for as long as I can remember, I've not only performed close-up magic, but I've put myself on a stage, and I've been performing platform magic, stage magic, cabaret magic, you know, for the last 25 years. So for me to stand in front of an audience, I feel very comfortable with that.
Right.
And I think that's what helps the close-up magic in a competition scenario, because a lot of people that I watch in a competition, as soon as they start doing close-up magic, they look down here and they're introvert, and they're just talking maybe to this person, but they're not acknowledging that there's 300 people in front of them, and they need to, you know. I mean, when I did, both of the FISMs, you were in an auditorium with thousands in. I mean, it was frightening. But because I was used to performing to the audience, I was looking everywhere, and it's like Juan Tamariz says, you make threads and you kind of connect with people at the back and at the front, and you consciously look all over to bring people in towards you. If you haven't got that ability because you've not had the experience, then the audience don't know why, but there's something that jars, and that's most likely what it is.
Nick, we're nearly out of time, but I want to know what you're working on. What's next for Einhorn?
Good question. And as soon as I know, you will be the first to know. I'm currently working on my virtual show because, you know, sadly, that is all we're able to do at the moment. So I'm working on that, and I'm kind of deciding what I like and what I don't like about it, and trying to create a product which I'm really proud of for that environment. But I'm also very conscious that when we eventually come out of this, and we will come out of it, we are going to be in a situation where if we've spent the last 7 or 8 months so far, and probably another 7 or 8 months, if we've spent that time and we haven't progressed what we were doing so that it's ready for the new normal, whatever that is, then I think it's a colossal waste of time. So I'm also trying to work on new material that I know that's going to work, even if we have to be a little bit more careful about approaching people, and you can't go close to this one and close to that one. So that's what I'm spending a lot of my time working on at the moment.
Thank you. We always end the show with 4 quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Favourite pizza topping?
Pepperoni.
That's quick. Very determined. I like it. Favourite movie?
Forrest Gump.
Favourite person or people that make music?
Ooh, I'm not really a music lover. I love, and this is going to sound like I'm really uneducated in the music front, I love the Carpenters.
Okay.
I like Gary Barlow. I think his lyrics are fantastic. McFly, I love their music.
So you're like a teenage girl, essentially.
It's basically, yeah, exactly.
And finally, who would you rather fight? 1 massive Andy Gladwin or 100 Joshua Jays?
Oh, well, they're both I'll take them both on.
Nick Einhorn, thank you so much for giving me so much of your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been great fun.
Take care.